Sophie Cunningham's cuddle demand to Caitlyn Clark fuels Fever reunion buzz. Say what? Yeah.
A brief throwback clip from Sophie Cunningham quickly turned into one of the most discussed moments around the WNBA. She shared an old video featuring Caitlyn Clark. And what followed went far beyond simple fan excitement. It sparked immediate, league-wide conversation. Clark responded with a short comment that felt casual at first, but given the timing, it carried far more weight than expected. That single reply had Fever fans analyzing every word. With the league frozen in free agency, CBA negotiations dragging on, and expansion drafts approaching, nothing feels accidental anymore,
Indiana Fever fans want nothing more than for their team to bring Sophie Cunningham back in free agency this winter, whenever the WNBA league office and its players agree to a new CBA. Of course, Cunningham isn't the only member of the Indiana 2025 team that fans are clamoring to bring back, as Kelsey Mitchell is just as beloved among the fan base. But while Mitchell might make more of an impact on the court compared to Cunningham, the latter's off-court charisma and star power have endured her to the Fever fan base to an impressive.
Even social media posts are now being treated like strategic moves. Sophie jumped back in with a playful reply about cuddling and having dinner cooked for her a couple of nights a week. It sounded lighthearted, but it also reminded everyone just how close this group really is,
Tell you what, Pat, the board in here during timeouts and stuff is hilarious to me. And it's not just here, it's every arena we go in. There's so much fun stuff happening in the environment. How could you not come to a WNBA arena and not feel it?
That kind of chemistry matters, especially with roster decisions about to become ruthless. The real debate is now taking shape. Indiana will soon have to decide who is worth protecting when expansion teams begin selecting players. Keeping Sophie could mean letting go of someone else who brings real value. Those are the decisions that keep front offices awake at night. What began as a simple flashback now feels like a preview of difficult choices ahead. Fans sense it too. Everyone involved was clearly joking. It was normal teammate energy. Nothing more than that. But the bigger takeaway is not the humor, it is the message beneath it. Caitlyn Clark does not engage like that casually unless there is real comfort there. And Sophie Cunningham responding the way she did suggests she wants to remain part of that group. In this league, public signals like these matter more than many want to admit. Before breaking down how this affects Indiana's roster decisions, the reaction in the comments deserves attention. The moment the post went live, some fans tried to turn it into something negative. One comment even questioned Caitlyn Clark's personal relationship based solely on friendly banter between teammates. That is where the line gets crossed. This is the reality surrounding high-profile players right now. Two athletes can joke online and suddenly people chase a storyline that has nothing to do with basketball. Caitlyn Clark is openly in a committed relationship with Connor McCaffrey. Sophie Cunningham is straight. They are friends and teammates interacting on social media. That is all there is to it. Now, back to what actually impacts the league. Sophie Cunningham has built real star power. In 2024, she ranked as the second most searched female athlete in the United States across all sports, not just the WNBA. That level of attention brings visibility teams cannot ignore. She co-hosts a podcast on the Volume Network with Colin Cowherd, appears regularly across major sports media, and has grown a fan base that reaches well beyond basketball circles. That kind of reach factors into every serious front office discussion. Here is where it gets even more interesting. Sophie Cunningham spent just one season with Indiana. In that short time, she rose to become one of the most searched female athletes in the country. That kind of rise is not accidental, and it goes far beyond personality or podcast appearances. A major part of that visibility comes from the stage she is on. Playing next to Caitlyn Clark puts a spotlight on everyone around her,
Is also the only player in the entire league that we sat back and witnessed literally physically defend Caitlyn Clark on the court. Just keeping it real. Watched a lot of other teammates just stand around while Sophie trying to scrap. And for some of
Indiana is no longer just building a team. They are operating on one of the biggest platforms in women's sports. And that changes how every roster move is evaluated. The Fever now face a difficult situation because of expansion. With Portland and Toronto joining the league, Indiana must prepare for an expansion draft that forces teams to expose parts of their roster. Most expansion formats allow only 5 or 6 protected players. There is no flexibility. Caitlyn Clark is an automatic protect. Aaliyah Boston is locked in. Lexi Hull is safe. Nalissa Smith and Aaliyah Boston are core pieces as well. That already uses most of the available slots, leaving perhaps 1 or 2 spots for everyone else,
doesn't necessarily have to choose when it comes to getting Cunningham or Mitchell. Both players have expressed interest in returning. The Fever's front office will have enough money and flexibility to re-sign them, both if they...
That is where the tension begins. Both Kelsey Mitchell and Sophie Cunningham are unrestricted free agents, and both have publicly said they want to remain in Indiana. On paper, that sounds ideal. The front office has enough cap flexibility to bring both back if they choose to. The issue is timing. If Indiana re-signs both players before the expansion draft, they would be forced to protect both. That consumes valuable slots and leaves other contributors exposed. Every move now carries consequences, and there is no clean solution. Now consider the real risk. What happens if Indiana decides not to protect Sophie Cunningham because they do not want to use one of their limited slots on her? That is where things could unravel quickly. Portland and Toronto are not entering the league quietly. They are starting from scratch, and that means they need players who can generate immediate attention. Sophie fits that profile perfectly. She is a dependable rotation player, but more importantly, she brings instant name recognition. If she is left exposed in the expansion draft, there is almost no chance she goes unselected. New teams want players fans already recognize. Players who can appear on local radio, podcasts, and media segments and actually draw interest. Expansion franchises do not have the luxury of waiting years to build relevance. They need faces, voices, and personalities immediately. In a league where Caitlyn Clark has already pushed attendance and television numbers to new heights, visibility matters more than ever. Sophie represents the type of asset front offices target early. But there is another layer that does not show up on spreadsheets or search rankings. You see it on the court. When Caitlyn Clark took hard contact last season, when defenders crossed the line, one player consistently stepped into the moment. Sophie did not hesitate. She brought toughness, edge, and presence when it mattered. That physical response matters. Every star needs someone willing to absorb contact, set a tone, and remind opponents there is a cost. That role is not glamorous, but it is essential. Losing a player like that is not just a marketing loss. It changes a team's identity on the court. Sophie Cunningham brought an element that box scores cannot explain. When Caitlyn Clark was pushed, knocked down, or tested, Sophie was the one who stepped forward. Not later in interviews, not with comments online, but in the moment. That kind of response establishes a tone for a team and builds locker room trust in ways numbers cannot capture. Indiana had players who posted stronger stat lines last season, but none brought that same edge. There was no other player who consistently showed the willingness to physically stand up for the franchise star when games became intense. In a league where Caitlyn Clark will continue to draw extra defensive attention, having someone ready to step in holds real value. Kelsey Mitchell must be part of this discussion. She has averaged around 17 points per game and has been Indiana's most reliable scorer for years. From a pure basketball standpoint, she is the safer option. If decisions were based only on scoring and efficiency, there would be no debate. The challenge is that Indiana may not be able to protect both unrestricted free agents. If it comes down to choosing one, basketball logic and the bigger picture may not align. Mitchell is the stronger on-court producer, but losing Cunningham could hurt in ways that are harder to replace. Sophie brings media attention, fan connection, defensive toughness, and natural chemistry with the face of the franchise. Those qualities are not easy to find in free agency or the draft. That is why the Instagram moment mattered. It was not random. Caitlyn Clark did not simply joke around. She sent a signal. When a generational player publicly indicates she wants a specific teammate back, it deserves attention. Not only to keep her comfortable, but because she may be highlighting a fit that does not always show up in data or scouting reports. Looking beyond the stat lines, Sophie Cunningham's impact becomes clearer. Last season, Indiana did not just improve, they transformed their identity. A team long stuck near the bottom suddenly found itself in the playoff conversation. Caitlyn Clark's arrival was central to that shift. Aaliyah Boston taking another step forward mattered as well. But veterans like Cunningham helped stabilize everything around them. Sophie understood how to play next to a ball-dominant guard. She did not need constant touches or attention to stay engaged. She focused on details that rarely trend online. She took charges, spaced the floor, hit open shots, and played physical defense whenever she checked in. Her energy off the bench changed the rhythm of games. Those are the traits teams seek when building around a young star who controls the offense. Sophie did not demand plays be run for her. She accepted her role and embraced the hard work winning teams depend on. Timing adds another layer. Free agency cannot officially begin until the CBA is finalized, and negotiations remain stalled over revenue sharing and salary cap structure. There is no clear timeline. It could resolve quickly or stretch longer than expected. Once it does, everything will move fast. Free agency will accelerate, and expansion draft preparation will follow immediately. Indiana does not have the luxury of waiting. They must decide now who they value most and who they are willing to expose. That is why the social media moment matters. It brought this conversation into the open and made it harder for the front office to ignore what their franchise player is signaling. There is another scenario that receives far less attention. What if Sophie Cunningham ends up in Portland or Toronto and becomes the face of a new franchise? She is 28, firmly in her prime, and has already proven she can draw attention beyond the court. Place her in a featured role where the spotlight belongs to her, and it is easy to imagine her becoming a breakout figure. She may never be an all-WNBA first-team player, but impact is not measured only that way. Expansion teams value connection. They need players fans recognize, players who sell jerseys, energize arenas, and give cities someone to rally behind. Sophie checks those boxes in a way few available players do. If Indiana lets her leave with no return or loses her in the expansion draft without protection, that is a valuable asset gone. Decisions like that can linger, especially if she thrives elsewhere and becomes a centerpiece in a new market. The counterargument is fair. The Fever cannot build a roster based on emotion or online engagement. Winning still matters. Kelsey Mitchell is the stronger scorer. Lexi Hull showed real growth last season. Nalissa Smith was drafted second overall for a reason. If protecting Sophie means exposing one of those players, the basketball logic becomes difficult. But modern sports no longer operate in isolation. The gap between on-court value and entertainment value has narrowed. The WNBA recently secured a media deal worth roughly $200 million annually, a massive increase from the previous agreement. That growth did not come from postseason drama alone. It came from unprecedented attention driven by Caitlyn Clark. The league is now being valued by how many eyes it attracts. In that environment, a player like Sophie Cunningham carries weight that traditional statistics do not fully capture. She may not have an all-star label, but she is a name casual fans recognize. She is someone people tune in to watch, and that matters in today's league. That is why Indiana finds itself in a position every front office dreads. There are multiple paths forward, and none are simple. One option is to re-sign both Kelsey Mitchell and Sophie Cunningham, protect them in the expansion draft, and accept the risk of losing another contributor. Another path is to prioritize Mitchell, allow Sophie to reach free agency, and hope the market works in Indiana's favor. There is also the bold approach of prioritizing Sophie because of her off-court reach and on-court fit with Caitlyn Clark, even if that forces a difficult decision elsewhere on the roster. What is clear is where the players stand. Caitlyn Clark has made her preference known. The fan base has echoed that support. Sophie has shown interest in staying. The uncertainty lies with the front office and how it balances what she brings against what might be lost. If Indiana chooses not to protect her and she lands in Portland or Toronto and quickly becomes a fan favorite, that decision will not fade quietly. It will be revisited for years, especially with the franchise star having publicly signaled her stance. This is not just a minor roster adjustment. It is a choice that could shape Indiana's offseason and influence how the team is viewed moving forward. Sophie and Caitlyn want to run it back. The challenge is finding a way to make that happen without creating another hole through expansion. Ultimately, this situation comes down to one question. Indiana is not just choosing between players. They are deciding what kind of franchise they want to be in this new era of the